beloved child of God, listen. There are moments in life when goodbyes don't make sense, when the person who once called you home suddenly walks away and you're left wondering, did I mean anything to them? Did all of that love just disappear? But I need you to listen closely right now, because before they let you go, your soulmate needed to tell you something, even if they didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Their soul has been crying it ever since. You were not just a chapter in their story, you were a mirror for their healing, and though their words failed, Spirit has not stopped speaking sometimes. When love feels unfinished, it's because Spirit still has a message. Buried in the silence, a truth that needs to reach your heart before you can move forward in peace. And that's what this message is about. Not about bitterness, not about longing, but about understanding what was really happening beneath the surface of that connection, because many of you watching right now are empathic souls. You love deeply. You forgive quickly. You see potential where others see problems. You don't just fall in love with a person. You connect with their spirit. And when that kind of connection ends suddenly, it shakes your faith. But hear me. Just because someone couldn't love you the way you deserved doesn't mean they didn't love you at all. It simply means their capacity was limited by their wounds. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." That means we must love from wisdom, not from wishful thinking. We must recognize when Spirit is teaching us something through love, not punishing us before they let you go. Your soulmate spirit wanted you to know. You awakened something in them. They may not have said it, but you shifted their heart. You reminded them what real love looks like, and even if they couldn't stay, that impact remains. This message is for those who have loved and lost, but still feel that lingering connection in their soul. It's for the ones who are trying to find peace after goodbye, for the ones who can still feel their person's energy in their dreams, their songs, their memories, for the ones asking God, why did I have to love someone who couldn't stay? By the time this message ends, you're going to understand that some endings are actually spiritual beginnings, that sometimes the goodbye is not rejection, it's redirection, and that what they couldn't say in words, their soul has been saying through energy, emotion, and timing ever since. So before we go deeper, take a moment right now, breathe if you're ready for understanding instead of confusion, peace instead of pain, and clarity instead of chaos. You're in the right place. And before we begin, I want to invite you, if you haven't already, to subscribe to Daily Motivation Prayers. This space is for you, the healers, the lovers, the ones who believe in faith even after heartbreak. Here, we don't chase love, we attract it through healing, prayer, and divine wisdom. So subscribe, turn on your notifications, and stay with me until the end, because today you'll finally understand what your soulmate never got the chance to tell you before they let you go. Number 1, their soul recognized you before their mind could understand you. There are connections in this life that move beyond logic. You can't explain them. You can only feel them. You meet someone, and something inside you wakes up, something ancient, something familiar, something that whispers, I know you. That's not imagination. That's spirit recognition before they ever spoke your name. Before you ever touched hands, their soul already recognized yours. This is why you felt that instant pull, that deep calm in their presence, that strange sense of safety even when everything else in your life felt uncertain. Weren't imagining that energy. You were encountering someone who was spiritually tied to your journey. Long before this lifetime, see, the soul doesn't follow human timing. It doesn't operate on logic or schedules. It moves through purpose and divine orchestration. When their soul met yours, something in them remembered love. Not just romantic love, divine love. The kind of love that reminds a person of who they truly are beneath all the layers of pain, pride, and fear. That's why, even if they walked away, part of them still feels your energy. They may have tried to silence it, distract from it, or replace it, But the spiritual bond that was awakened between you doesn't disappear just because distance entered the picture. In Corinthians 13:12, Paul writes, "For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face." That means there are things we sense before we fully understand them. Love is often one of those things. When their soul recognized you, their mind couldn't make sense of it. They were drawn to you, but they didn't understand why. They felt peace and panic all at once. The peace of familiarity and the panic of vulnerability. You were not just another person in their life. You were a reflection. You mirrored back the parts of them that were unhealed. And you mirrored back the beauty of who they could become. That's why your connection felt so intense. It wasn't just about attraction. It was about awakening. But awakenings are not always gentle. Sometimes they stir up everything hidden, everything buried, everything unspoken, and for some people, that kind of light is overwhelming. You didn't scare them. The truth did. The realization that someone could see their soul without judgment was too pure. Too unfamiliar. They were used to hiding, but you saw straight through them. And here's the truth. When two souls recognize each other before the mind can process it, one often runs while the other reaches out. One person feels ready, and the other feels fear, but don't mistake their retreat as rejection. Sometimes Spirit allows the separation not to punish, but to prepare, because that recognition, that deep soul knowing, it plants a seed that continues to grow. Even in silence, you awakened something in them that they cannot unfeel. You stirred a love that wasn't born from desire but from destiny, and whether or not they return, that recognition has already changed them. It's teaching them what love without masks looks like. It's showing them what it means to be truly known. Proverbs 19:21 reminds us, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." So even if their human plans led them away, divine purpose is still at work. The recognition wasn't random. It was revelation. So if you're watching this and you still feel their energy, know this. You are not crazy, and you are not alone. Spirit sometimes uses soul recognition to awaken both hearts, even if one walks away first. Theirs did recognize you. Their mind just wasn't ready to understand what their spirit already knew, and now, the same God who allowed that recognition is guiding both of you toward healing, so that when love returns, it will be from understanding, not confusion. Number 2, they loved you in silence because fear spoke louder than their faith. Love, in its purest form, asks us to be vulnerable, to open our hearts even when we don't. Know if it's safe to trust someone with the parts of us that no one else has ever seen, but not everyone has the strength to love that way. Not everyone is ready to face the mirror, that true connection brings, and your soulmate, the one who walked away, the one whose silence hurt more than words ever could. They loved you in silence, not because they didn't care, but because fear spoke louder than faith. When they met you, they felt something they couldn't explain, a peace that frightened them because it wasn't built on control, a love that made them feel both alive and exposed at the same time for someone who spent their life guarding their heart. That kind of love doesn't feel safe. It feels dangerous because love requires surrender, and surrender feels like loss to someone who's been wounded. They didn't know how to love you without losing the walls that had protected them for years. So instead of leaning in, they pulled away instead of speaking truth. They hid behind silence, but make no mistake, and they loved you. They just didn't know how to love you out loud. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." Yet even when love is divine, fear still whispers, what if I'm not enough? What if they see my flaws? What if this ends and I break again? Those questions haunted them, and instead of trusting the love that could have healed them, they listened to the lies that said they weren't ready. You may have mistaken their silence for indifference, but it was actually their struggle. They loved you quietly, through glances, through memories, through the energy that still connects you. Their spirit wanted to reach out, but their ego built a cage around their heart. It's easy to think, if they really loved me, they would have stayed. But sometimes Love doesn't leave because it stops caring. It leaves because it can't yet carry the weight of healing that love demands. They saw the way you loved them, with grace, patience, and forgiveness. They saw the light you carried, and that light revealed every shadow they tried to hide. And instead of stepping closer, they retreated into the familiar, even if it meant losing something sacred. But here's what Spirit wants you to know. You didn't lose them because you weren't enough. You lost them because fear and faith cannot dwell in the same place when the heart is still learning to trust. John 4:18 reminds us, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. That means every connection you've experienced, even the painful ones, are shaping you toward a higher kind of love. A love that's not rooted in fear, but in freedom. They loved you in silence because that was the only way they knew how. But silence doesn't erase the truth. It only delays its confession. And deep down, they still carry that unspoken love like a prayer they never said aloud. So if you've been replaying every moment, wondering why they never said how they felt, know this: they did feel it. They just didn't have the faith yet to face what that love would have required of them. And sometimes God allows love to pause, not to punish, but to purify. Because when fear finally gives way to faith, that same love becomes something divine. Number 3, your connection was a mirror, not a mistake. When you look back at the love you shared, it's easy to focus on what went wrong, the silence, the distance, the heartbreak. You replay the moments, searching for answers, trying to understand why someone who once looked at you like you were their world could suddenly let you go. But the truth is this: your connection was not a mistake. It was a mirror. Every soul connection, especially one that shakes you to your core, is designed to show you something about yourself. Not to destroy you, but to awaken you. When you met them, something inside you came alive. You started to see yourself differently. You began to feel things you hadn't felt in years. Passion, purpose, vulnerability, and in that same reflection, your soulmate began to see themselves too. But mirrors don't just show the beauty, they reveal the broken pieces too. That's why your connection felt both magnetic and painful. Because you weren't just falling in love with them, you were confronting the parts of yourself that still needed healing. James 1:23-24 says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. Your connection was that mirror. It forced both of you to look, not just at each other, but within. You may have thought the purpose of your relationship was love, but it was actually transformation. They reflected back your capacity for compassion, your depth, your loyalty, but also your insecurities, your fears, and your unhealed wounds. That's what made it feel divine yet difficult, because spiritual connections are not here to make us comfortable. They're here to make us conscious. And for your soulmate, that mirror was too clear. They saw themselves in you, the potential, the truth, the pain. They realized how far they were from the love they wanted to give, and that realization scared them. Sometimes, when a person isn't ready to heal, they will reject the one who reflects healing back to them, not because they don't care, but because they can't face their reflection yet. You were that reflection. You showed them what genuine love looks like. You loved without conditions, without trying to fix or control. And that kind of love exposes everything fake, everything fearful, everything hidden. It's not easy being someone's mirror. It's painful to love someone who isn't ready to see what you see in them. But please understand, Spirit chose you for that role for a reason. You were strong enough to show love in a way that awakened them, even if it didn't keep them. Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. That means even this connection, even the heartbreak, is working for your good. It's refining you, preparing you, maturing your heart for the love that's truly aligned with your destiny. You weren't being punished, you were being polished. And while they may have turned away from the mirror, you don't have to. You can take what this connection showed you and use it to rise. You can let it teach you your worth, your strength, your divine capacity to love without losing yourself. So when you think of them, don't see regret, see reflection, because the truth is, they didn't just see love in you, they saw themselves, and that's what made it both beautiful and unbearable. Your connection wasn't a mistake, it was a mirror, and through that mirror, God is shaping both of you into who you were meant to become. Number 4, they let you go. Because love needed space to grow. There are moments in life when spirit whispers, let go. Not because the love wasn't real, but because the timing wasn't right. And when your soulmate walked away, you felt like the ground disappeared beneath your feet. You thought letting go meant losing them forever. But sometimes, letting go is the only way love can truly grow. See, love without space becomes dependency. It becomes fear, dressed as affection. And even when two hearts are meant for each other, they can't thrive when one or both are still learning how to love from wholeness rather than from need. When they let you go, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because the version of themselves that loved you wasn't yet strong enough to stay. They needed to learn how to stand, to heal, to grow, apart from the connection that made them feel seen. It's hard to understand that when your heart is breaking. But spirit often allows separation to bring revelation. Think of it like this. A seed planted in the soil has to break. Apart before it can grow roots, it has to fall into darkness before it reaches for light. That's what your connection is going through. A breaking that leads to becoming. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. There was a season for your union, and there is a season for your growth. Neither cancels the other. Both are sacred. When they walked away, you might have felt abandoned, but in truth, they were being led into a journey they had to take alone, because sometimes, if God allowed them to stay too soon, they would have loved you from brokenness instead of wholeness. And broken love, no matter how passionate, cannot sustain itself. They needed space to face the parts of themselves they had ignored, the guilt, the fear, the unresolved pain that made them run. They needed time to realize that love is not escape, it's expansion. And you too needed time. Because while you were pouring into them, you may have forgotten to pour into yourself. You were so focused on keeping the connection alive that you began to shrink to fit their comfort. But Spirit saw that, and Spirit said, no more. Sometimes divine love requires distance so both hearts can rediscover their strength, so both can meet again, not as half-filled vessels, but as overflowing ones. Romans 12:12 says, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. That's what this season is calling you to, patience in the pain, prayer in the process, and joy in the hope that nothing truly meant for you will ever pass you by. They didn't let you go to hurt you. They let you go because their soul knew something their mind couldn't yet say. That growth requires space. And one day, when they've learned what love really means, they'll understand that the letting go wasn't the end. It was the beginning of transformation for both of you. So instead of asking, why did they leave? Ask, what is this space teaching me? Because love, when it's divine, never truly leaves. It evolves, it expands, it refines. And maybe, just maybe, that space between you isn't separation at all. It's preparation. Number 5, their absence is teaching you to love yourself first. Their absence hurt, didn't it? The silence felt louder than any argument, the distance cut deeper than any goodbye. Because when someone you love suddenly disappears, it leaves you. Standing in the middle of memories that don't know how to end. But what if I told you that their absence is the very thing God is using to teach you what real love looks like? Not love that chases, not love that begs, not love that breaks you, just to prove it's real, but love that starts with you. You see, God will sometimes allow separation not to punish you, but to protect you from continuing to forget yourself. You can't pour from an empty heart. You can't heal someone who refuses to see their own wounds, and you can't keep giving love to people who only show up when it's convenient. So when God allowed them to leave, He wasn't being cruel. He was being kind, because He knew if they stayed, you'd keep shrinking to make room for someone who never planned to grow with you. Their absence is teaching you that your peace is sacred, that you don't have to explain your boundaries, that your worth doesn't depend on who stays. It depends on who you decide to be when everyone else walks away. Sometimes you have to lose the relationship to find yourself again, and that's exactly what God is doing. He's bringing you back to you. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." You were guarding others while leaving your own heart unprotected. You were praying for them more than you were praying for yourself, and God had to interrupt that cycle. He's teaching you now that love is not sacrifice without wisdom. It's not endurance without boundaries. It's not staying loyal to dysfunction because you fear being alone. The truth is, being alone is not punishment. It's preparation. Because solitude is where God restores what people drained. It's where He replaces dependency with discernment. It's where He reminds you that you don't need validation when you already carry divine value. You are learning that you are not hard to love. You were just loving people who couldn't match your depth. You are realizing that you don't have to chase closure. You can create it through healing. You are discovering that love isn't about losing yourself to keep someone else. It's about loving yourself enough to walk away when it stops being healthy. Their absence is forcing you to face the parts of you that you've ignored. The parts that settled, the parts that tolerated, the parts that believed love had to hurt to be holy. But now, you're learning that love can be calm, it can be kind, it can be consistent, it can be rooted in peace, not panic. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." That stillness, that space they left behind, is holy ground. It's where God whispers your worth back to you. It's where He says, "You are my masterpiece, not their mistake." You don't need to beg anyone to see your value, because the one who made you has already approved you. And when God approves you, no rejection can revoke it. Their absence is not your loss. It's your lesson. It's the sacred space where you learn to love yourself the way you always should have, without needing validation, without proving your worth, without performing for acceptance. This is your season of self-love, anchored in God's love. It's not selfish. It's spiritual, because when you finally learn to love yourself first, you'll stop settling for people who make you forget your worth. You'll start to attract relationships that reflect the way God loves, patient, pure, and peaceful. So if you're still aching over their absence, let that ache remind you, you're not broken. You're being rebuilt. God is restoring your heart. He's filling the void with His presence, and He's teaching you that sometimes love's greatest lesson begins the moment someone walks away. Because when you finally love yourself first, you'll realize their absence wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. Number 6. God sent them to remind you of your worth. Before they walked into your life, you forgot how powerful your heart really was. You forgot the kind of love you carried, steady, loyal, rare. You forgot that your presence was a gift, not something people could treat casually. You were pouring from places that were already empty. You were giving grace to people who hadn't even earned your honesty. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that being chosen by them would finally make you feel enough. But then God stepped in, and He sent someone not to define your worth, but to remind you of it. Sometimes the people who come into your life aren't answers to prayer, they're reflections of forgotten truth. They mirror back what you've stopped seeing in yourself, your strength, your light, your divine value. You thought they were your forever, but they were really a reflection, a living lesson, because before you could step into the love you were meant for, you needed to see how much you had stopped valuing yourself. You see, when you forget your worth, you begin to tolerate what dishonors it. You overextend yourself. You make excuses for red flags. You give chance after chance to people who were never meant to sit that close to your soul, but God loves you too much to let you keep living like that. So he sent a wake-up call in the form of a person, someone who revealed how far you had drifted from the truth of who you are. Psalm 139:14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. But sometimes we don't know it full well until love fails us, until the illusion of being needed breaks apart and we're left face to face with our reflection. And that's when God whispers, see, you were never unworthy. You were just undervalued. That person saw parts of you that you didn't even honor. They were drawn to the light you carried, the way you cared, the way you gave, the way you forgave, but their inability to handle that light was never proof of your lack. It was proof of your magnitude, because not everyone can hold something holy. Not everyone can handle someone chosen. So when they left, when things fell apart, God didn't want you to crumble. He wanted you to wake up. He wanted you to remember that you were never someone's second option. You were never meant to compete for attention that was already yours by design. When you remember your worth, you stop running after people who can't see it. You stop chasing what was never meant to choose you. You stop explaining your heart to those who only came to take from it. And that's when peace enters, because peace comes when you finally stop negotiating your value for temporary connection. You begin to understand that the one who truly loves you will never make you question your worth. They'll protect it, they'll honor it, they'll reflect it back to you. Proverbs 31:25 says, she is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. That's the energy of a healed heart, the kind of confidence that doesn't crumble when someone leaves, because now you know that your worth doesn't rise or fall with who stays or goes. It's rooted in God. It's secured in truth. It's sealed in grace. You are not too much. You were just in spaces that couldn't hold someone with that much love inside them. You are not hard to love. You were simply giving love to people, still learning how to receive it. So if their leaving made you question yourself, let this be your reminder. Their departure was divine because it gave you back the one thing you had forgotten, your sacred worth. And now that you've remembered who you are, God can finally bring you what aligns with that truth, love that honors your heart, peace that doesn't cost your joy, connection that doesn't compete with your calling. They were never the validation, they were the revelation. And that revelation set you free. Number 7, God sent them to position you for purpose. Every person who's walked through your life, whether they stayed, hurt you, or helped you, had purpose written all over their presence. Nothing about that connection was random, not the timing, not the chemistry, not even the ending, because when God is preparing you for destiny, He doesn't just use blessings. He uses people who stretch you, people who challenge you, people who break you open in ways that comfort never could. You see, some of the greatest awakenings come disguised as heartbreak. You prayed for direction, but God sent disruption. You asked for clarity, but God allowed confusion, because sometimes He has to shake the ground beneath your feet to get you to move. They didn't come to stay, they came to stir, to push you out of comfort, to remind you that your story doesn't end in the same place where your heart broke. Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. All things, Not just the good moments, not just the answered prayers, but even the pain that made you question everything. That means their presence, and even their absence, is working together for your good before they came. You were living safely, doing what was familiar, settling for predictable, but purpose doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in pressure. And sometimes God uses people to apply that pressure, to stretch your faith, to deepen your trust, to teach you how to depend on Him, not them. When that relationship ended, you thought you lost direction, but that was the moment you actually found it. Because their leaving forced you to stop looking at people for purpose and start looking at God. Genesis 50:20 says, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." That's the story of every connection that hurt, but still helped, every ending that broke you, but somehow built you at the same time. They didn't derail your destiny. They directed it. They didn't block your blessing. They positioned you for it. Because if they hadn't left, you wouldn't have prayed like you did. You wouldn't have discovered your strength like you did. You wouldn't have become this version of yourself, the one that's rooted, refined, and ready. God knew that relationship would shift your path. He knew it would wake something up inside you that was asleep. The leader, the healer, the warrior, the believer. Their departure wasn't rejection. It was redirection. Because sometimes the only way God can move you into your next is by making the current season too uncomfortable to stay in. That's why it had to end. That's why it couldn't continue. Not because God was punishing you, but because He was protecting the promise inside you. You thought they were your destination, but they were just the bridge. The moment that connected your pain to your purpose. Now you're walking different. You're no longer chasing validation. You're chasing vision. You're no longer asking, "Why did this happen to me?" You're declaring, "God, thank you for using this to grow me," because that's what happens when you realize the truth. Every person who walked in was part of heaven's plan. Every heartbreak was divine positioning. Every loss was sacred redirection. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" That's what God is doing in you right now. He's birthing something new. He's building something stronger. He's revealing something greater. That person didn't come to destroy you. They came to prepare you. They came to shake your perspective so you could finally step into your purpose. Because sometimes the thing that feels like an ending is really an initiation. A holy beginning, a divine setup for something far beyond what you could have imagined. Their role in your life wasn't random. It was prophetic. They were the fire that refined you, the test that strengthened you, the mirror that showed you who you were becoming. You didn't lose when they left. You were launched, and now God's about to show you why it all had to happen exactly the way it did. Every encounter, every conversation, every heartbreak, every goodbye, none of it was random. It was all divine design. When you look back now, you'll see how the hand of God was guiding you, even through the tears. Every person who entered your life carried a purpose. Some were there to awaken your heart, some to test your patience, some to break what was false, so truth could finally rise inside you. You asked God for growth, and He sent people to reveal where you needed healing. You prayed for clarity, and He allowed confusion to teach you discernment. You wanted love, and He gave you lessons that would make your heart ready for real love. Nothing was wasted. Not one moment of it. You thought you were being broken, but you were being built. You thought you were losing people, but you were finding purpose. You thought the silence meant God had forgotten you, but it was proof that He was working in hidden places. Romans 8:28 is still true. All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. That means even the pain had purpose. Even the rejection carried revelation. Even the loneliness was holy, because this entire time, God was not just changing your circumstances, He was changing you. You became stronger, wiser, softer, yet sharper in spirit. You learned to love without losing yourself. You learned to let go without bitterness. You learned to walk by faith, not feelings, and now you stand in a place you couldn't have reached without everything that broke you, because every tear watered the seeds of purpose, every delay was divine protection, every heartbreak was holy redirection. The people who came weren't random. They were chosen instruments in God's orchestra for your transformation. They taught you how to see yourself the way God sees you. They exposed what you were still healing from. They positioned you for the purpose you're walking into now. So when you think of them, don't see failure. See formation, don't see loss. See learning, don't see rejection. See redirection, because God didn't send them to destroy you. He sent them to develop you. And now you're walking into a season where peace is your confirmation, not pain. Isaiah 61:3 says, He will give you beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. That's what He's doing right now. He's trading your heartbreak for healing, your mourning for meaning. You're not behind, you're not forgotten, you're being aligned. And as you step into this next chapter, remember, the love that's coming will not repeat the lessons you already learned. It will reflect the growth you earned. So if this message spoke to your spirit, if something inside you felt seen, understood, and strengthened, I want you to take a moment right now, hit subscribe to Daily Motivation Prayers, because this space isn't about hype, it's about healing, it's about truth, growth, and faith that transforms. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of this message resonated with you most. And if this word blessed you, if it met you in the middle of your healing, tap the super thanks button to support this ministry and help us keep spreading messages of hope, restoration, and revelation across the world. You are seen, you are chosen. You are not waiting for purpose, you're walking in it. Every person God sent was part of your preparation, and what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you. It was never random, it was always revelation, and it was always God. Amen.